So hopefully you enjoyed that demo that I created. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that first tone in the intro. And I turned off all the effects so you can hear the guitar part by itself, and then we'll go through step by step how I created the tone itself. So the guitar part by itself is really simplistic. Let's move over to the multi-voicer and we'll take a look at the steps that I made to create this sort of arpeggiated sound. So starting with the intervals, they're all pretty simple. A fifth, a third, a fifth, and an octave above my root note. Where it gets a little bit more creative is the delay portion, where I just opened up this macro slider here, so that way my intervals are 100 milliseconds, 200, 300, and 400 milliseconds delayed from the initial signal. If I kept that macro slider at 0, like its default position, it would just sound like this. But I really wanted to get something that sort of cascaded as it went through the arpeggio. Building on the arpeggiation from the multi-voicer, I went to the delay pedal, put it on wide mode as well as vintage digital to kind of get that decay as the delays came in. And I set the time at 1/8, a couple of other settings here, but let's listen to this now. So then after that, I added reverb and some chorus to it. And then I went over and turned on the compressor pedal just so the playing was a little bit more consistent. That way all of the arpeggiations and all of the delays were also a little bit more consistent. The next sound that comes in are just simple guitar swells, but again, I went to the multi-voicer to kind of make it more sound like a pad synth than guitar. Again, we'll start off with just the plain guitar. I'm using channel 1 again, made some minor adjustments on the tone stacks. Let's move over to multi-voicer so we hear how those voices affect that initial sound. So then I went over to dial in the delay and the reverb pedals. Let's talk about the delay first. To start, I pulled the mix up to 100% and I boosted the amount of delay type as well. Now these 3 different types of delay will give a little bit different saturation characteristic to your delays. Now, if I pump this up to 100%, you'll hear right off the bat the difference between the delay types. I'll turn off the reverb as well so we can just hear what this is. So you can hear that you get a little bit more breakup with the modern type. The vintage digital has a little bit more vintage, sort of lo-fi to it, whereas the diffusion just diffuses the signal entirely. So I chose vintage digital because that gave me a nice saturation, but it doesn't break up the signal altogether. I left the mode on wide because I didn't want the delays to be ping-ponging left and right. So after the delay, I turned on the reverb and the shimmer switch as well because that gave that really nice pad synth feel to it. I turned on the overdrive pedal with just a little bit of drive to it, brightened up the tone just a bit, just to get a little bit of breakup as well. And you'll see that I made a couple of slight adjustments to the EQ afterwards just to make everything fit within the mix. So let's go ahead and move on to our main guitar tone, which we chose the lead head and default impulse responses. I made only some very minor EQ changes as well as changed the gain just a little bit. I turned on the overdrive pedal, dropped the drive all the way to 0, brightened the tone, and boosted the level just slightly. And then made some changes on the EQ, and pretty much that's all I had to do for this guitar tone. Finally, moving on to the last guitar tone, I chose to use the acoustic amplifier, which sounds fantastic with my Hoppus 7-string. Didn't use the multi-voicer, but I made some changes to the tone stack, the presence, the blend knob, bumped the gain down just slightly. I did put on a compressor just to make my dynamics a little bit more even. I have the delay on with just a very slight mix on the modern type. Wide setting as well because I didn't want the delay to ping pong left and right. And then I turned on the reverb pedal. I made one additional send because I wanted some reverb shimmer in the background, but I didn't want it to be as loud as the default shimmer is. So I have this on a delay throw. Let's go ahead and listen to the tone with just the acoustic amplifier with no effects going to it. And that's it for the tones that I used to create this demo with. If you like the presets that I made for this demo, I'll leave a link in the description so you can download them when you try out the Archetype Tim Henson for yourself. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.